Okay, welcome to the February 22nd episode of the Benmore Brief. Today I have co-founder Tim, me and Tim at the head of the ship here. And so we have a couple cool topics to go over today. Tim heads up most of the sales and marketing. So we'll talk about our outlook on sales for 2026, trends that Tim's seeing, any market opportunities that he's seen emerge in the past year, 6 months or so. And then also kind of a question that Tim and I have talked about flippantly here and there over the course of the past year, which is the difference between our current market that we're targeting, upmarket specifically into the heavy mid-market space, larger mid-market space and enterprise space, and sort of opportunities there and the difference in marketing there. We'll talk about our engineering first company culture and how that helps across the board on both sides of the business. We'll talk about something that Tim and I talk about quite a lot with is change management and sort of synchronizing both our sides of the business. And then lastly, we'll talk about sort of trends that Tim's seeing with AI coding and clients that are coming in with AI assets or prototypes and how that's affecting sales, if at all. So yeah, I guess without further ado, Tim, nice to see you. It's been a week or two. So
yeah, no, it's good to have you back on American soil.
Yeah, no, it's good to be back. Nothing like home. So anyways, outlook for 2026. What are your goals here? What are we targeting? What's it looking like in the coming year?
Yeah, I mean, how candidly can we, or do you want us to talk about like numbers and stuff like that?
We could keep it abstract. I already put out on the show yesterday that we're trying to go for that 1 million a month number.
Okay, cool.
So
perfect. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like you said, right? More of what my day-to-day responsibilities are is just everything in the realm of client acquisition. So last year, or I guess kind of the last year and a half, it's been really trying to create a repeatable sales motion where we have inputs, we kind of can predict what the outputs are. And I think we've done a good job of that. So now it's more so, putting fuel on the fire there. So as of now, I mean, like you said, right, the kind of medium-term goal that we can definitely hit by, I think, end of Q2 is still very achievable. We want to hit 1 million a month in top-line revenue. There's a few different factors that'll play into that, but really the biggest thing on my side is making sure that we have a steady inflow of net new units every month. And so right now we're trying to sprint towards that 30 to 40 units per month. Previously last year, I thought that we would have to get closer to 40. But looking where we're at now, especially like a couple of things we've implemented in the back end, cap rate and all these things, I think we've grossly underestimated what our average LTV actually is, and so we probably won't even need to see that many units as we previously thought. Regardless, like we're not going to stop at that number anyway. So just having that be the goal is where we're at right now. We're making some good progress. We have a lot of data that's supporting that push, but that's kind of where we're at, short to medium term, at least on this segment that we're targeting currently.
yeah, and you think let's talk about the channels here. I know we've talked about this here and there. We're highly predicated around meta ads right now. Where do you see that topping out, a single channel for marketing? Do you see it topping out, and what does that look like?
So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like when you say topping out, that can mean a lot of different things, right? And it all depends on the value of the clients that we're able to get, right? So right now, I mean, last year when we weren't spending as aggressively, and also the LTV wasn't as high as it is now because we just, obviously from a pricing standpoint and other things, things were different. I think our cost to acquire on Meta is like close to $2,000 or $3,000. It's since doubled, but also LTV has been up by more than double, right? And so when you say like how far I can tap out, it just depends, right? I mean, obviously as you spend more, you have a law of diminishing returns, and cost to acquire gets more expensive. But if it still is if the number is still pencil, the number is still pencil, right? So I don't think anywhere in the realm of 8 figures, like mid 8 figures, we should still be fine as far as Meta. We're not really inventing the wheel on this at all. Like even right now, spending a few $1,000s a day. It's pennies, right, compared to what other firms or just companies in general spend
those
on
e-commerce
Meta. So
companies, yeah.
Even services, like you see services companies spending mid 5 figures a day.
Wow.
Across all channels. If the TAM is there, right? Like I said, I mean, we're not targeting like Fortune 500. So there's at any given point hundreds of thousands of people in market, right? In our demographic, North America. So I think there's definitely a lot more room, and that's why I'm very bullish on the channel going forward.
Yeah, and I know we made some changes internally as well in relation to upping our marketing creatives and stuff. So it's going to be very exciting. I do think, and I mentioned this yesterday on the show, I do think Q2 is going to be huge for us. It's kind of, I was outlining, I feel like you've had your side of the business relatively systemized and processized out for a long time. When we started the company about a year ago, I think we talked about just my side of the business, just due to the time gap that it takes to go through enough client iterations. It just takes longer to kind of get to a steady state of kind of just a repeatable process. I do think that we just got to that a couple weeks ago. Less support though, like less the support, because again, we still haven't even really, so that's going to probably take another 6 months before we really nail down like a systemized methodology for support. We have concepts, but support's going to come, and then I think we'll truly be able to actualize like an LTV number. But I do think Q2 is going to be very, very, very exciting, because I almost view it, I was thinking about this the other day, I'm like, well, we finally got a business now. Like, let's see if it works. Like, it took us like 2 years to find, I guess you could call it PMF. Like, we finally got a business now. We got a system. Let's see if it works. So I'm very, very excited for Q2 as well. But you mentioned something earlier, is the upmarket question, the F500s. We've talked about this internally, but from what I understand, and you can speak to this a little bit more, is it's a different sales method. Is that correct in terms of selling to those organizations? Have we seen any large companies come through our current pipeline, or is it pretty stuck at the mid-market level at most that are coming through our current channels?
Yeah, so highest we've seen is mid-market, but also that's actually by design, right? Like we've never even tried to message or target anything larger than that. But yeah, there's obviously tools and tactics that exist for different channels and different market segments. But at the end of the day, like everything is all based on the same fundamental principles, right? If you want to take an individual who's solution aware but unaware of the fact that you provide that solution, right, you first have to show up in front of them. That could be an ad, that could be a cold email, that could be a cold call, that could be an introduction. There has to be some sort of initial top of funnel mechanism, and then from there, there's middle of funnel content. All these things are the same regardless of what channel is. But yeah, as far as like what we're seeing, highest is going to be in your SMB mid markets. But again, that's in large part due to how
our messaging,
but also just the economics of it, right? Us being bootstrapped, we don't have capital from investors, and so a lot of our focus is how fast can we recoup, right? What's our cash conversion cycle on the front end, so that we have more capital to invest in more growth, right? And so markets that have enough meat on the bones for it to be worth it, but a fast enough decision-making process so we can be, cash efficient on the front end is where I think we can get a lot of return right now. But obviously once we have more capital just to play around with, and that's also human capital as well, to do things like outbounding and, networking and all these different things, right? That's when I think we could start to explore those other channels. But like I said, it's from a fundamental principle standpoint, it's all the same, essentially.
Yeah. I think we saw that with that one company, which we were never able to find, but they were a tech services company. Do you remember? And we investigated their channel, and they had, what's the video
VSL.
sales? They had a VSL.
Yeah.
They had everything. They had a whole funnel. They were just targeting 500s, but with a VSL. And it was kind of eye opening, where it's like, wow. Okay. Well, it seems to be the same. Probably
I did find their company, and I just forget it. I found it like 2 weeks ago. Yeah. I forget it again. It was like a P. I forget. Yeah. Now it's going to bother me, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
I wanted to say it was something to do like with there's a hammer in there somewhere or something. I don't know, but no. I mean, it's extremely interesting. Sort of that side of things. I'm excited to expand the relationship side of the business. We've got a couple of those deals flippantly, but from everything that I've learned, because as you know, like traditional service firms, purely relationship driven sales, especially like at our size, like let's just say you have a law firm, right? Just like a pure service company, like a law firm. They're running off. But from everything that I researched initially, it's just that many of the lawyers had been in the game and in the industry for 20 years, right? So, they people who they went to college with, people who they, went to law school with, etc. They're now in position. And so it's like, so I'm interested to see what that looks like for a company of our age. I'm sure it's possible. We've seen some initial success on that front, but I don't know. I think we are a little bit limited on that side. I don't know if you have any thoughts on relationship driven sales.
I tend to agree. I mean, like you said, a company like our types of companies that exist historically are typically going to be, a group of partners that have some sort of, experience within their market. They have a network just from being in that industry for, decades plus. And so, they're able to garner their first subset of clients through that. And then from there, they kind of can grow organically from there. Pros and cons with that, of course, right? Like you said, I mean, if you're 24 years old, you probably don't have 2 decades of experience in an industry, which is kind of where we're at, right? So you kind of have to get a little bit creative as far as how you garner that. Obviously, pros being if you can crack it, right? If you can actually figure it out, it's a more scalable model to get to X amount of revenue. Con being you have to pay up for that, right? Like every single day I wake up and I have to pray to Mark Zuckerberg so he allows me to give him thousands of dollars today, right? That's not a thing that you have to do if you have that network. And so I think you're right. I mean, we're seeing the early stages of that. We have clients that we have relationships with, and then it's been like, hey, let's do this, that. I'm super excited about that because those are things that we don't even have penciled into like our model, so to speak, like our economics.
Those are
right?
Nice to have.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice to have.
Exactly. I'm thankful that we don't have to rely on that, right? I think our job would be a lot more stressful if it was like, hey,
oh my gosh, dude.
I gotta go.
Because so much of that is predicated around psychology, anyways. So if you start being needy in your network, it's going to work against you. Whereas if we're needy with meta ads, we can be needy. We can just up the spend.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I think it will come. I think part of that push there is I think we'll get some of that with just our organic exposure that we're dialing in on. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, the reality is we didn't work at Accenture for 10 years. And if we did work at Accenture, we'd know the right people to call and we'd know the right connections and, we'd have that, but we don't. We kind of have to be, and also it's not the natural course of our business now. Like we have to put an effort to develop those relationships. If we worked at Accenture and worked our way up the corporate hierarchy, by definition, we would be put on projects and put in rooms where we don't have that naturally at our company.
Yeah.
In an upmarket sense, we have that naturally with the clients that we bring in, but in an upmarket sense, we don't have that naturally because we don't target upmarket. So we kind of have to put an effort behind that to garner and develop those relationships, which again, I think it's worth it. Like you said earlier, if the human capital and, monetary capital is there, then absolutely. I mean, there's very clear incentives to do that, but it's just kind of where we are.
And just to think about, I mean, you can also like buy those relationships as well. I mean, that's kind of where when firms expand traditionally, they'll bring in a partner and the partner buys in and then they can expand their book of business. I was talking to, one of those Beltway bandits, the kind of government contractors over in DC. And he was saying that's kind of how their entire sales motion works. It would just find someone who's a lobbyist, they're now your kind of outbound salesperson or director of sales. Really? And they just have their relationships that they just hit up and then they just do that on your behalf, right?
Really?
And so, it's not like you have to do X, Y, or Z. And then also to that point as well, like I literally was on a sales call. This might have been Friday with an individual because we can track exactly where first click, last click, wherever the people found us. This is a person, and I look at every single lead. I see where it came in from just to get a sense. They didn't have a UTM from an ad, so I'm like, all right, I was asked, like, where did you find us? He's like, yeah, I was like Googling around and I just saw something that came up on my LinkedIn randomly. And then I looked around, and she had actually read some of your book as well. And so she, came with a few questions. So like things like that, we can definitely hone in on, right? Having some more of an organic presence and allowing people to find us. I don't like the idea of like having that make or break us, but at least having that be in the back and compounding. Whereas the ads is like linear, but that compounds over years and can really bring something that's
yeah. If something hits the fan, fundamentally, we can always go back to ads, which is kind of the cornerstone. It's predictable, it's quantifiable, it's, systemized. I think everything on the relationship side of things. Now, traditionally, if you look at the industry, right, like there's a chance that our relationships could equal, if not get greater than ads at a certain point. But like you said, at a certain level, every large company is running some multi-pronged marketing effort, right? And I think we'll get there, but the relationship and the sort of, side of sales. It's just something that we started a little bit further down the mountain than someone who was a VP at Accenture for 20 years would. So, sort of first principles there in terms of attacking that.
100%.
Okay, so then the next thing the next topic we can get into is sort of our engineering first company culture. And obviously it's very clear to see on my side of the business operationally how, with our internal tooling and all this other stuff, how that's very important. But one thing that I don't think that we've talked about is, and you've mentioned in passing before, how helpful it is that you're a developer, that Mashoud is a developer. Can you speak a little bit more on how even having engineers essentially on sales is helpful on your side of the business?
Yeah, I mean, it just cuts down. Oh, there's pros and cons, but I think it's definitely a net positive. It just cuts down on the time to implementation, right? You have an idea, all right, how can I it's just done, right? Because I can just go ahead and build it myself as opposed to having to wait and then have, some off-the-shelf SaaS tool that isn't kind of exactly what I need. And you have that level of control and granularity. And so, yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a net positive. I don't know. Obviously, like in a firm like ours, really any firm, right? Typically your sales org isn't the most technical folks. So I'm not sure whether or not it's gonna persist at scale. Obviously,
right.
Maybe it's not obvious, but for people watching, our sales team compared to your side of the business, the delivery is an order of magnitude smaller, just because of how the leverage what it is that we do is. But it'd be interesting to see if we can kind of persist that culture. Obviously, I will always be in the weeds, right, building internal tools, whatever we need to do. But
I just don't think it's necessary to scale. It's just not necessary to have a technical sales, like a software development predicate. It's just not necessary to scale. I mean, we have, some people on the team right now who are not software developer, and maybe it limits them a little bit, but it's not, you can speak to this, but it doesn't seem like it's a make or break sort of thing on your side of the business.
No, I would say definitely does limit them a bit. I mean, honestly, a lot of that is just predicated on my style of selling. I tend to be very in the weeds as far as building value on a call. A lot of that comes down to my knowledge of the actual subject matter. But that's a style, right? It's not even the best way. I'm not only going to say that's the best way to do it. And so it's definitely, it's not make or break at all for people who are selling to be software engineers by any stretch of the imagination, as long as they can understand the prospect's needs, right, and communicate value in a way that they understand that we're a good fit or not. That's really all that it takes.
Interesting. One tweet that I saw maybe 2 weeks ago was, and you can speak to this, being a developer and a sales, going through the process of learning the skill of sales, was what are the differences in minds? Is it a different mindset going from a developer mindset to a salesperson mindset? What was the things that you've learned essentially, taking calls all day long for a year, year and a half? Yeah. What are some of the differences that you picked up in mindset?
Yeah, no, it certainly is. So yeah, for context, right? I was a self-taught developer. I taught myself how to code when I was 14 years old, and I was doing that all the way. So in life in general, I have a lot more experience developing software than I do selling over the phone or whatever the case is, right? So I'm coming at it from a very engineering-ish mindset. I think most engineers, most people with a technical background, they get very hung up on the thing, right? The thing itself. What are the deliverables? What are the promises? What are all these different things, the actual ins and outs of what it is you're talking to someone about? I think the biggest shift is, I think the overarching idea is just having a lot of empathy, and then also you have to actually get down into the transformation, not the thing. And I think a lot of our technical consultants and FDEs didn't really understand until we kind of showed them a sales call. We don't really get into anything about we get also just the touch points that people need to know to have their nerves calmed. But as far as the nitty gritty and all this stuff, it's not actually important. What's important is to make sure that that person that you're talking to understands that you understand them better than they understand themselves, right? And that you have experience solving this problem before, and you're not going to do wrong to them, right? That's really the biggest thing. All the actual nuts and bolts about that aren't really make or break. And I think that was a big shift for me in sense that, hey, this is also a lot of my development experience comes from pre-AI. So it's hey, you have to write out every line of code so that it works perfectly with the rest of the application, right? When you're talking in a sales, it's not really like that. It's very high level. It's very emotional based. Can you really read between the lines of what someone's saying, right, and kind of understand their really core reasons for why they're doing X, Y, or Z, and being able to solve that. So yeah, it's definitely a different mindset shift for sure.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And also one thing that I've seen with our FDEs is they are kind of salesmen, especially throughout discovery.
For sure.
And there was a business titan, I forgot who it was, but he also mentioned that at any point in any organization, everyone should be selling, like with that sort of mindset. It just is. And it's sort of a different sort of mindset that obviously we've put a lot of effort into developing across our team on my side of the business. But it just comes down to, like, I think you laid it out a couple weeks ago very well. It's like, you have a problem. We need to demonstrate that we understand not only your problem, but we understand your business problem. We understand the personal context surrounding the problem in a professional way, of course. But like, we understand your business problem. We understand your personal goals. We need to show that we are trustworthy in that sense. And here is what we can do. And hopefully there's synergy there, and sort of the problem and the solution all come. And in that's it, right? That's essentially, so it's not, oh, our service, this deliverable specifically is so cool, and this is a cool part of, look at our portal and all that. People don't care. They have a problem. They have business and personal goals and business and personal problems that they want solved, and they want to trust someone to solve it. And we just need to sort of lay out how we can do that. And if it matches, then great. If it doesn't, then it's fine too. Like, there's no harm there. We saved ourselves the headache early on. And that is one thing. And as you know, when I was on sales calls way back when, historically, horrific salesperson on those calls. But the reality is it absolutely cascades into my side of the business. It's needed. And I think some people have it naturally, and some people, but I do think it can be developed. Would you agree that it can be developed?
Yeah, 100%. And I think a lot of times when people, especially people who are technical, you see this, like, I know you're on Twitter a ton now, like with people who like quantify themselves as, hey, I'm like a solopreneur or like indie hacker, and they're so like marketing and sales averse. I think it's because they have a misconstrued definition of what that actually is. What you just said is perfect. If you're trying to convince someone to do something, you're wrong from the get-go. Like you started off wrong, you're going to end up wrong. There's no convincing going on. You just see, like, with our calls, with our contacts, we're not convincing anybody of anything. I'm just trying to help you better understand where you are, and then help you understand what it is that if there's alignment, you tell me. I don't really care either way. Yeah. And then that is it, right? And that's exactly what our consulting team does as well, right? Through the discovery and that process, it's like, hey, this is what you have. This is your constraints, timeline, budgetary, whatever the case may be. This is what we're able to offer you, right? You name the price, we name the terms, or vice versa. And we can connect or we cannot, right? And I think people have a misconstrued definition of it, but it's really as simple as that at the end of the day.
Yeah. I would say there's a level of nuance to it, especially. It's easy to do that where we are now, where we're not constrained from a capital perspective or from a talent perspective. But yeah, there's nuance. It's hard. It's really hard. And this is like, I'd actually like to hear your thoughts on that, on this theory that I have. I think that you can actually, if you're starting from zero, approach business like that from the get-go. Now, it's hard if you're in debt, if if you are struggling and you just need a deal. But I do think you can start like that from the get-go. Like, if we were to start again, no money, and we're both horrifically in debt, it's harder, personally, to sort of portray yourself that way, and sort of but fundamentally, I don't know. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Like, is there a in your opinion, is there a give and take there? Can you be a little bit more on the sales side out of necessity earlier on? Do you have to be? Or is it better to just start, no matter where you are positioned in business, from the get-go, being like, this is what I offer, this is what I charge, take it or leave it, and then kind of rolling from there? I don't know. I'd like to hear your opinion on that.
No, I think I understand what you're saying. At the beginning, like, so you can have that ladder stance you just mentioned, as far as, this is what I offer, this is what I charge, take it or leave it, only if what you offer and what you charge are actually in line with what the market wants, right? I think people get caught up in the sense that, hey, I'm going to do this and this is the way I want to do it. It's my way or the highway. As a business, especially as a service-based business, your job is to serve the market. Like, your job is literally to take what the market wants and give it to the market, right? And so at the beginning, why there's like a little bit of give and take, and yes, you should be maybe a little bit more malleable and taking in feedback, is because you probably don't actually know quite yet what the market wants. You don't know what the market wants yet. Yeah, and so once you get to that position, you can start to have that stance. But before that, yeah, there definitely is a lot of give and take.
Yeah, that makes complete sense to me, because, or else it's essentially you're creating a foundation of immobility out of delusion. Or out of, like, just not predicated around solid market data. So it's like, it's like arguing from a place of just a incorrect argument. Like, you can take that stance, but no one's going to agree with you, essentially. Yeah, that's interesting. That makes a lot of sense to me. Do you think on the sales side that we've nailed that down, though? I mean, I would say on our side of the business, we have. Would you say that we've it seems like we have, or are we still malleable? Are we still figuring stuff out on your side of the business?
I think we definitely are still figuring things out. I mean, so for one particular avatar, I think we definitely have it pretty much nailed, right? When it comes to like individuals who are starting, let's just say on the startup side, right?
Mm-hmm.
Seed or pre-seed or bootstrap founders who are non-technical, have some sort of industry experience, or SMEs. They're looking to build a B2B, and they want a partner to actually help them grow and essentially de-risk their idea. I think our sales process for that is a 10 out of 10, right? It's just it hits it out of the park. Just because we have had so much iteration on that, on the messaging side as well as the delivery. So I think that's basically nailed. Where I think we can definitely still have a little bit of wiggle room, I think we're seeing this right now, is for individuals who are more so just looking for implementation, but still have the capital to be able to invest in a product of a size of that nature. For them, our kind of initial offer doesn't really make a ton of sense. And so I think we're doing a little bit of iterating on that. But yeah, from a first principle standpoint, I think we're there. But yeah, I don't think first of all, I don't think you ever change. And this probably segues into the next question you're going to ask as well. Also, the market always changes. So you have to always adapt to the market. Now we're seeing so many people that are empowered by AI, so to speak, quote unquote, that are coming into these companies with some sort of preconceived notions about what all this stuff looks like. And so you have to kind of change your positioning to match that a bit. And we're seeing that a bit now where now we're playing with like development credits and things of that nature to help ease that train, all these different things, right? So it's always a give and take in terms of that.
Yeah, that's interesting. That was a nice. So with the rise of AI, the rise of software development to non-technical individuals, the trend that I've seen, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that I think we are seeing a little bit more people who are more vision oriented, more like they know what they want to build, especially if they have experience coming from an industry. And like you mentioned, like we are just seeing specifically someone who has got a prototype ready to go and they just need implementation. They don't need consulting, strategy, anything else. Maybe a little bit of planning, maybe if anything technical planning, but not so much pure like business consulting. And they're just looking for implementers. Is that correct? And is that a trend that you're seeing emerge on your side?
I think we're seeing that. I think we're seeing that for sure. I think more broadly what we're seeing, and there's a tweet, I forget who tweeted this, but I think the prevailing sentiment when all these different, like first and foremost, no code, but then after that, like chat to app, things like Lovable, Replit, Base 44, all these things, the prevailing sentiment was, like companies like ours are going to go extinct because now you can have someone who's non-technical and just build out their application. But what we're seeing is that it's actually expanded the market by an order of magnitude because what it is, like previously, if you had an idea for something that you want to build, let's say an internal tool, you're a director at some company, you had to go and, consult with some firm, up 5 or 6 figures to just get started. And then like the classic, IT project lifecycle where they just kind of bill you for more and more and more. Now, right. And obviously that's a very like frictionful process to even start that. Now there's a lot less friction because you can just go on Replit, spend, $100 on the tokens, build out something that then inevitably breaks. And then now you're in market looking for a solution and you're problem aware and solution aware, right? And essentially these companies are like almost affiliates for us because now they're creating people with an actual like tangible physical representation of their unsolved problem, right? And so there's a twofold approach. We definitely are seeing more people who have, a more solidified vision and have something to anchor towards that. But we're also seeing people who have the opposite, right? They have something that they're not 100% sure whether this is the right direction at all. And so they need that much more consulting to help them figure it out.
Yeah, it's tough. It's one thing that we deal with on my side a lot is, and I've explicitly laid this out in for Deployed, is it's like at the current point in time, if you use a no-code builder, the only thing that helps expedite for us is what you want to build and your end vision. I don't think there's been a scenario where we've been able to just take the prototype and then just plug in wires. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. Maybe in the future, if the no-code tools get very robust in terms of security processes and all these other things, then it is just like, hey, here's my product, secure it for me, give me, sort of some documentation surrounding it, and then just support it. But as of right now, it's the only thing it's helped our team out is essentially determine direction. But then even then, it's a layer of abstraction over the way that I laid it out, it's like a race car, right? So it's like previously, if you had, like you're saying, if you have an idea for an application before AI, before Lovable, before all these no code tools, you would simply just sit down, think about what you need, probably type it out in a requirements document, give it to a firm, and enter into the discovery phase there. Now, what you can do is you can visualize and build it. Now, in essence, I think that that's net good because it helps both sides of the coin out, but it dials into one specific aspect where it can get really, really, really convoluted, and it's a danger zone. Is if you don't have an initial plan and you just start coding away on Lovable, the implementation time is so low that you'll just think of a new feature. And it's almost this dopamine loop of you won't even sit back and think about if that feature is necessary for your application or not. And if you're non-technical, you don't understand the complexity of what may seemingly be like a simple feature. For example, an integration with QuickBooks. Like all that you see as a non-technical person is a little button that says connect QuickBooks. But the reality is behind the scenes, that's a robust integration that deals with many security layers and endpoints and stuff like that. But then you'll get that in your prototype. You'll think that that's simple. So that's kind of where, and then you have emotionally and invested time into this. So you're more tied to that feature being a core feature of your product. So when you bring it to a consulting company and they say, well, this specific feature is going to take a month because it's a QuickBooks integration, the sort of like the friction there is increased tenfold to what it would previously be if you just wrote out, your spec document essentially and just gave it to a firm and then you enter to the discovery process. I don't know where that's going to go long term. I mean, the big thing is if these no code, and I'll ask your opinion on this, if these no-code tools can legitimately go from text to enterprise level application and support it, which they might, I mean, who knows, right? Like they might, then that doesn't become that much of a problem. But if they don't, and if AI plateaus, specifically in the realm of it's really good at prototyping, but you still need expertise to implement, that's kind of an emerging massive friction point, I would say. That, again, we've thought about this. We have methodologies of getting around this by being extremely strict in our onboarding process and like expectation setting. But I'd like to hear your opinion on, do you think that these no-code tools will eventually get to a point where, people can go from idea to full application, enterprise level security grade application with a couple, not a couple prompts, but some level of iteration back and forth with an AI tool? Do you think that that's coming, or?
I don't know. I don't know like how much it matters in the sense that like the reason why companies or people in general, companies, people, organizations, whatever the case may be, come to work with a company like us is because they just don't want it. Like there's a price, there's a value in the fact that they don't do it. Like if we just, whatever that complexity is, so even let's say, for example, these AI tools are able to do that, then the work becomes putting your fingers and typing the keys to write that prompt. And they also just also don't want to do that either. They don't want to do anything, which is not a bad thing, right?
And determining what to build as well.
Exactly. And that's the next thing I was going. Like a lot of what really the entire thing that we spend our time in on these initial like intro calls to further qualify people and also help them understand what it is that we do is think of it twofold, right? One is the biggest value that we're able to provide, and you can see this tangibly in when we're selling the full discovery process versus just like scoping and quoting. It's an order of magnitude more costly because it's an order of magnitude more valuable, right? Is that, let's say, for example, this is the way I always describe it, right? You have there's buried treasure somewhere north of us, right? It's like, let's call it 100 miles north, right? With what you're doing right now, you're just worried about start moving somewhere. So you start going at 100 miles per hour east. Well, guess what? You're never going to get there, right? So what we do is like, we first figure out where this treasure is, like build this map, and then we can now start talking about how to get there, right? And people really resonate with that. The second thing is, like you're saying, it's just a conversation regarding value versus effort, right? And so if you have limited resources and time, then does it make sense to spend additional month to build some QuickBook integration when you initially thought, because you use Lovable, that's going to take 2 months or what 2 seconds, whatever the case may be, right? And so that's that. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, right, the value is in having somebody own it, right? If you have to do it yourself, and obviously it depends. What someone's time is worth when they're at, let's call it SMB or pre-seed startup level, is not as much as what an enterprise's time is worth, right? Let's say you're director of IT, at some Fortune 500. Like at a certain point, you don't want to sit there and type in some key. You know what I'm saying? You just have someone else do it for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think like a big question that we get a lot from our staff is, what happens if that does happen? Is our business busted? And it's like, absolutely not, because you don't think that Boeing, whatever, however many billions of dollars, if they wanted to, they couldn't hire an entire team of software developers and implement their own tech. Of course they can. Of course they can. A director can sign off, make a new department, and they could build all their software internally if they wanted to. But there is, like you said, there is value in not doing that and not thinking about it.
Yes.
And it's a lever. It's a lever as well. And I think if I were to make a prediction right now, I think that because of AI, obviously that concept still exists at the massive F500s, but the value of a service company fundamentally pre-AI could only serve the F500s, and that's like any billion-dollar service company, technical services company, is only serving F500s or big players, because that's the only place where that sort of mindset came to fruition. It's like, yeah, I'm a director at Boeing. I don't want to hire an entire engineering department. I don't want to support my software. I don't want to lose my job if the project goes wrong either. I'm going to go with a trusted brand name. And at the very least, if the project goes sideways, I can blame the trusted brand name, and they're a trusted brand name. So, what's the loss there? I was like, oh, the project failed. I went with Accenture. Like, they're supposed to be able to do that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But I do think with AI, that sort of mindset and need is simply just trickling down. It's just trickling down market, which is, again, where we kind of plug in there, is essentially we're not selling anything different to these companies that hasn't previously. We're not reinventing the wheel here. It's just that there's a new technology that has allowed the same level of service that was previously only sort of able to be provided to massive companies can now be provided to startups, mid-markets, SMBs, etc. And that's kind of the hole that we're trying to fill. Like, anyways, point being, there's the value of our company is holistically predicated around not thinking about it, de-risking it. And like circling way back earlier, we are seeing a suite of clients now that do want to think about it, do want to own the vision, and are just looking for implementation, which fundamentally it's a different business. There's successful companies there as well, but it is a different sort of business. One that, again, Accenture absolutely provides. Any large service company absolutely provides strictly implementation, especially in government contracting. Like those orgs, they just get a PRD and just build it out. But they're still, even there, they are still coming to us because they want someone to own the project. They still don't want to think about it. They have the vision and they're more vision oriented. They just don't need the consulting aspect, but they still want someone to own the vision. Would you agree?
No, 100%.
What's your yeah
100%. Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think one thing that you said that stuck out that I think is definitely true is that, like you're saying, really all that we're doing is taking the same level of service. And I think, like, if I was to get a transcript of all the calls we've done in the last year, especially at this market, it's like people are so surprised at how professional our process is at this level of the market. Because otherwise, you typically couldn't see this structure of like a discovery process and until you get into that mid-market or, lower level enterprise level engagements. But, like you said, the technology now is democratizing it in the sense that, you can really start to bring it down and have other people get engaged with it. So it's definitely exciting. No, it's definitely a really exciting time.
Yeah, it's interesting. And one of the most interesting things to find out is our process is relatively agnostic of market. We've worked with large corps. It's relatively the same process that we can implement across the board, whether it's a massive org or a small org. One thing that I saw emerge, though, is I think if there's a transitioning landscape, I think it's at the large companies, because now that sort of sell of a director hiring an entire IT department, they don't need to do that anymore. They can just hire one software developer. And so it's a little bit less risky for them, which is, again, I've never worked at Accenture, so I'm making complete assumptions here. I think from what I've seen, a lot of value go into those larger organizations is shifting to training. It's shifting to not so much implementation, what it used to be, but it's shifting to training now. It's shifting to pure consulting, not so much implementation, because yeah, they can just have one of their analysts build an internal tool, again, at large orgs, privacy and all this other stuff. So I don't know, but I do think it's shifting a little. And again, complete assumption here. But from what I've seen, if we have an entry point into that market, I've already sent out a couple messages, as we talked about earlier. It's just like, I think there's a ton of value of us just coming in and holding a meeting with your entire staff and just training them, just being like, these are the tools available to you based off what your company has provisioned to you. Here's some ways that you can utilize them. And I'm interested to see if that's sort of an arm of the business that we can break into. It's just fundamental. That's just pure consulting. Like that's just pure consulting and training, because a lot of these large organizations, whether it's due to red tape, bureaucratic constraints on the AI tools that they're allowed to provision to their employees, whether it's due to just the fact that many employees are not even aware of AI or how to utilize it effectively on a day-by-day basis. I think the lowest hanging fruit at a lot of large organizations is literally just hiring an AI consultant to come in, not build out some robust workflow, not try to replace anyone's department, and just being like, hey guys, pull up Gemini, right? Here are the risks associated. Don't put in PII, don't put in health data or anything like that. But if you need to summarize something, here's how to do it. If you need to research something, here's how to do it. And that's what I've seen in my couple conversations, is where a lot of the large organizations are at. Just because, so novel technology, there was a massive trail before. Many companies haven't even got off paper yet. So it's like, what are we going to do? Go to a trucking company and implement end-to-end AI workflows? No, it's like, let's just tell them what Gemini is,
Yeah. And that value is nothing new. Like, think of companies now that, like a large sales org that switches their CRM to like Salesforce, something like that, right? They obviously have the individuals, they have the manpower, but they'll still go to like some Salesforce integration company or some Salesforce consulting company to train their people, because the service company, the consulting company has just had an order of magnitude more iterations on it. And so they just have the learnings, right? And again, with us, it's even more of a desperate, difference here, because it's so cutting edge, where we, like, in the last 6-12 months, we've just seen so much more because we've just experimented more with these different tools, right? Than these other companies. Like you said, they have more laws they have to follow, more red tape, all these different things that they have to follow. And so we're now able to distill, right, those learnings and then just empower their teams with those. So I don't think we've ever talked about that at length. I think that definitely could be a channel that, like you're saying, could provide a lot of value to some different organizations.
Just pure training. That's fundamentally, when I was researching large tier 1 consulting firms like McKinsey, I think Bain's up there. I forget. They have their tiers in consulting. At that level, it's wholly predicated around experience. Like, that's what you pay a management consultant to come in, and they are delivering you advice not only based off of what that specific consultant that's deployed in your project is saying, but it's also predicated around the over century level of experience that McKinsey has had, literally over centuries, which, this is something that we've talked about flippantly here, but we've made an effort to try and aggregate as much data across as many of our projects as possible to sort of expedite that. It's a tweet that I sent out a couple weeks ago, was like, again, complete assumption here, I don't work at McKinsey or whatnot, but like, if I was just knowing what I know, I would just pause operations at McKinsey for a week and just have everyone just into a database, just write out everything that they know about all of their projects that they've ever been on. And that's what that company Mercor is doing, essentially, at the sort of white collar job space, is they are essentially trying to train models, from what I understand, trying to train models to essentially aggregate all of that white collar level data on projects. And something that, I think eventually long term, we just have this massive data center of experience across all of our projects, which is fundamentally our IP, that any new consultant can just, and we're kind of seeing this with like the book that I wrote and sort of that aggregation, but that's kind of the end goal. It's like you kind of have this data center that you can just query, derive, ask questions about, almost like like a central brain to the organization, essentially.
Yeah. And I think one thing that we don't give ourselves enough credit on is, like, to compare yourself to a company like McKinsey, who, again, like management consulting. When did management consulting drop? Like that's just it's as old as time, right? but like actual like, AI implementation, we literally came out with it. And so we probably have top 3, 5, whatever you want to call it, percentile in the entire world of companies that have experience from an org level, like using these tools every day and iterating, like actually legitimately very, very high.
Yeah.
Ranking in that. And so, like you said, the more projects we do, the more we learn, the more we implement on that side of things, the more valuable all of that IP becomes in terms of like implementing and training.
It's super tough because like I agree with that, and obviously like our level of talent at the team also predicates towards that. It's not just our data that we have, like it's also like the people that we hire. Sometimes I just want to scream though, like I don't know, Home Depot, please, like just give us $1,000. I could, like we can come in and genuinely not like actually just train your employees, and you probably would see massive. I believe that wholeheartedly. Again, like if we get a contract like that, we'll see. Again, like we will have, that's the situation like we were talking earlier, like we'll have a lot of malleability in terms of like actually like tracking the value that we give. But it's just tough because it's the relationship based, it's not our market. But if there's anything I'm super optimistic about is like, yeah, we're going to nail down this SMB mid market. But I do think as we get more credibility, reputation, I think some of those higher deals will start to fall our way. And that's something that our team wants. Our team, just out of a function of being extremely self-motivated, they want to work on with the biggest companies in the world, the most complex AI problems. Like they're screaming for that. But it's the age-old sort of problem in business is you can't just wave a magic wand and have 500 all the F500s in our book of business. Yeah. As much as I think
exactly. It is an interesting problem to solve.
Yeah, we'll get there. Anyways, so I guess the last topic that we kind of skipped over here is given the fact that we have autonomy in separate sides of the business, the stuff that we've learned about change management at Benmore and some of the hiccups and sort of solutions that we've solved surrounding that. I don't know. What are your thoughts on change management? We haven't really formalized a process for that. We might want to do that, honestly, to create like a book there. But what are your thoughts on change management the past couple months here?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if. Well, first of all, yeah, I do know nothing catastrophic has ever happened in terms of that. I think as the team grows, there's like a formula or something like that like models the relationship between like team size and like channels of communication, which just grows. It's like a square, right? So it grows exponentially. And so we're probably seeing the effects of that right now at our current team size, and just putting the proper system in place to mitigate those risks. But yeah, at least on my side, like obviously, my like the org that I have as far as direct reports and like that whole like side of the tree is obviously a lot smaller. So like there's a lot less formality when it comes to changing stuff. I'll just have a quick meeting or even just Slack, like, hey, we're doing this now. All right. And there's like 4 people that are involved in that decision. Whereas over on your side, it's like, it takes a little bit of a village to really implement.
It's a bit more complex. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a little bit more complex, but yeah, I think we've done a good job of that. And I think we're continuing to put better processes in place for that. But yeah, it's funny. I was talking to an individual on a sales call like last summer. She does change management consulting for Fortune 500s, and they pay like 5 figures, 6 figures for an engagement to help her figure out like, hey, when we update this CRM or the CMS, who should we email in the company? And this is like the whole engagement, right? So yeah, it definitely gets a bit more hairy the larger the team size, but I think we're definitely tracking in the right direction right now.
Yeah, no, it's something I think we'll have to formally nail down here in the next year. Is just sort of a process there. I think right now it's been fine being relatively fluid. I've had to go through a little bit, a bit more robot just due to team size in terms of trickling out information. Like you've seen this on my side with wikis and stuff like that. It's kind of necessary in formalizing locations for information. But yeah, I think it's something we'll have to nail down formally in the next year or so. Okay, well, that being said, any final thoughts wrapping stuff up? Any trends that you're seeing? Any predictions over the next year, whether that's for Benmore or technology as a whole?
Final thoughts, trends. Yeah, I think the more overarching trend is what I said earlier, as far as like, I think people got it wrong when I said that these different like AI tools would kind of kill our business. It's done the exact opposite, right? It's done the exact opposite. So I'm very excited about that. I think overall just trend is I'm just excited, right? I think we have a lot of life and a lot of really talented people on the team. It's been really cool seeing all this come together, and I think we're right now like at a really interesting influence where, this same time next year is going to look a lot different than what it looks like right now. It's the same way it's looking different now than it did last February. So I'm super excited. Looking forward to continuing to grow, not only from a business perspective, but also like personally. But I think it's definitely some interesting lessons that you have to look into yourself and figure out, hey, how can I change to help better solve the situation. So I'm just excited, man. I'm looking forward to everything.
Yeah, likewise. I think the last thing that you said there is extremely true. Is the level of personal growth that you go through naturally as a function of growing a company was something that I don't think either of us could have predicted, but it's definitely held true, especially as being leaders. Like, yeah, you see your personal character sort of tentacling its way into every aspect of the business. So, I'm also very excited over the next year, professionally and personally, to grow. We'll see. What did you say? We'll see. It's definitely going to be exciting, regardless.
It'll be interesting. It'll always be interesting. Good or bad, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it will. Yeah, it will be very exciting. So, all right. Well, anyways, man, good to catch up. I'll see you tomorrow. You coming in tomorrow?
I'll be in there, man. I'll see you in person.
Hell yeah. Okay. All right, man. I'll see you.